We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Free Association Radio. This is Robert Phoenix, and you're listening to the Monday Mashup. How is everybody? It is Monday, and we all kind of gather together here at the beginning of the week and reassemble our molecules after our weekend activities, which sometimes can involve some Bacchanalian behavior or Dionysian descent into distraction, although not always the case. Oftentimes people use the weekends to better themselves and to work on some goal, some intention, some mission that they have set aside for their lives, even though their day-to-day 40-hour work week life, or if you are like most of Americans, 25-hour a week work life. By the way, that's one of the great conspiracies that nobody really talks about, and it is probably the most evident. What happened to the 40-hour work week? Well, the 40-hour work week has been broken up. Actually, the 40-hour work week has become closer to the 70-hour work week, and it's been broken up into 3 separate jobs. Why? Because nobody wants to pay you anything for more than 25 hours a week. Because if they do, what happens? Well, they're on the hook for more insurance. They're on the hook for more payouts to the state government, dividends to the state government for workers' comp and all that stuff. So instead of hiring people on at 30 to 40 hours a week, which makes them essentially full-time employees, they hire people for 20 to 25 hours a week. Now, what happens when this takes place? Well, I'll tell you what happens. People wind up having a part-time relationship with their job. And so you have owners of businesses, and I've experienced this recently, you have owners of businesses who require that people have a full-time commitment to their business even though they're only working 25 hours a week. And it's cognitive dissonance. It's almost impossible to get people to buy into that kind of commitment that the owner of a business has because they got to make money, and yet have only a part-time affiliation and have zero benefits as a result of that. And this is what's happening in America right now. The 40-hour work week is abolished. So now we have the 70-hour work week. Why? Because now people have to go out and get another 20 to 25-hour a week job. And I've seen this. I've seen people scoot back and forth between 2 to 3 jobs. Well, I'm here now for 5 hours. I'm going here. I've got a half an hour to 45 minutes between this job, and I'm going to this job. And then maybe they've got another job on the weekends, and somehow they make it all fit. But guess what? They get no benefits, and there is really not a very competitive pay scale either. I mean, if you have 500 people competing for 25-hour-week jobs. Why, where is the pay scale competition? And this is all really as a result of what's happened over the last 4 years with the bailouts. And the Obama administration has made zero concessions to small businesses. Zero. All the concessions have been made to big businesses. Why? I'll tell you why. Because the model, here is the model, boys and girls. The model is that business will be run by mega businesses. Why do you need mom and pop stores when you can have a Home Depot, or you can have a Target, or you can have a Kohl's? You have these massive box lot stores which employ, potentially hundreds of people, which could be employed by smaller mom and pop stores or mid-sized chains that have more of an investment in their employees. This is the model for the new America, the box lot model. So that's not the new model. It's been around for quite a while. But what we've seen now is that the playing field is not level at all because of the breaks that big business gets. I'll give you a clear example of this. A good friend of mine has 4 restaurants in San Francisco, and they're not big restaurants. They're really just cafes. And she has been, first of all, having a business in San Francisco is very difficult. If you are a private business owner in San Francisco, especially on the restaurant end, the hoops you have to jump through in order to keep that business open and running it's Promethean, to be honest with you. So here's what happened to her. She had a number of audits coming through the city of San Francisco and the state of California, but mostly the city of San Francisco, for income tax, you name it. And the amount of money she had to spend to get through all this paperwork and all these receipts and dealing with an uber aggressive auditor who really just wanted a notch on her belt was mind-boggling. I mean, she went through this audit process for 2 years. Well, guess what? Her biggest competition is Starbucks. And what does Starbucks do? Starbucks pays a flat fee to the city of San Francisco, and a flat fee to the state of California, and likely a flat fee to the government, the federal government. And what happens is that they get to slip through the audit system because they're paying money up front. They can afford to do that. They don't have to spend countless hours sitting down with these Kafka-esque automatons going through these debit and credit sheets. So here's where big business gets these breaks. It's like, okay, you can afford this? Fine. So the small businesses, the mom and pops, they can't afford to pay what Starbucks pays. So then what do they have to do? They've got to slog through all of these massive barricades in order to stay open and stay profitable. It's not an easy feat. And this is just in the city of San Francisco alone. California, it's very hard to do business here. It's extremely hard. It's going to get harder. I'm going to talk a little bit more about California, what they're proposing with a per-mile tax. It is coming, by the way. If you live in the state of California, be prepared. Be prepared to have your mileage taxed. Why? Because the common misconception about the state of California is that it has no money. Well, that in fact is not true. And Walter Burien, who has gotten into the CAFR budget, the 2 books that exist for the state of California, has discovered that the state of California has plenty of money, has resources like you would not believe. The state of California, when you look at the private books, is one of the most robust economies in the world. And it's because of all the investiture that the state of California has been focused on over the course of the last 35 to 40 years. And if the state of California, sold a few of their assets, that they can zero out the budget quite easily. But they don't want to do that. They don't want people to know about that. And the reason they don't want people to know about that is because they want to create a scenario where there is a significant amount of lack, a dearth of funds. So now what do we have? We have this new taxation coming here, which is going to be taxed by the mile. If you think that California is the only state in the union that this is going to happen in, Well, you're wrong, because once things happen in California, they begin to happen all across the United States. So this is coming to an odometer near you. Now, most new cars, by the way, have black boxes in them which can be read by scanners, the same scanners that they have at the Bay Bridge and the Golden Gate Bridge and the Carquinez Bridge, you name it, the fast track scanners. Those are the same scanners that will read your black box. And those black boxes have RFID transmitters in them, in your car already. They're there. They've been in your car. They've been in an American car since 1988. All American cars after 1988 have these things in them. And so you're going to get taxed per mile. This is where it's all going. So what's that going to do to people's psyches? They're going to drive less. So now what do we have? We have a soft cage. We have an electronic cage. Because, well, we don't really want to drive because we're going to get taxed for it. Not just gas anymore, even though gas is plenty expensive. This, by the way, this whole electronic tracking system is for when they make the switch from petroleum cars to electric cars. Because, again, electricity theoretically is a lot cheaper than fossil fuels. So if you just jack into your house, well, it's going to cost less, but that cost is going to be passed on to you with this tax. This is where it's all going. And there's going to be a major push to move a number of cars in this country to electric. And I can tell you right now that the older cars are the ones that are going to go first. If you have a car that's pre-1988, it will be targeted. And they tried to do this back in California with a bill in the 80s, the 90s called Smog 2. And there were a number of, this is kind of an interesting time in California. Jesse Jackson and some of his pals were invested in this company that had these new smog machines. And these smog machines were going to read your car's smog output in a very different way, and they were going to raise the emission standards and the whole 9 yards. But it was going to be huge, and every single station in California where you would go to get your smog test, your smog check, would have to buy all this new equipment. And as a result of this, they were automatically going to exclude any cars before 1988, 1989, 1988. Gee, I wonder why. So there was going to be this move where they were going to give you, $2,500 to $3,000 for your car if it was pre-1988 or pre-1989, so you could then put it towards the purchase of a new car, which would then be compliant with Smog 2 technology. Well, people here freaked out. I mean, they totally freaked out. I remember my parents, of all people, went to Sacramento to protest. My parents, part of the silent generation. They got people out of the woodworks to protest this thing, and Smog 2 did not pass. However, the whole notion that we would have to, at some point in time, get rid of our cars, especially pre-1988, pre-1989 cars, is still very much alive, and it's going to be even more alive as they get into this mileage tax bit. Now, just because you don't have a black box doesn't mean you're going to be immune to it. What they'll do is they'll make you put up a small RFID strip on your window so that, however long you go or however far you go, your mileage will be recorded. And that's how this whole thing is going to go down. So anyway, this is kind of the state of the union here in California, and fortunately or unfortunately, I will not be here to experience it. I have to be somewhere else to experience perhaps another version of it, but it's certainly not here. Yesterday was an interesting day. Did anybody follow this guy, Felix Baumgartner, who jumped out of the blimp that was at the edge of the planet's atmosphere, at the edge of the planet itself? Did anybody follow this? This guy broke the sound barrier. He broke the sound barrier. It's an amazing story. I'm going to read this to you. If you haven't followed this, it's absolutely fascinating. And there's some interesting angles to this, which I haven't quite worked out yet. But let me just say that the place that he landed was Roswell, New Mexico, okay? So here we have this man falling from space. And where does he land? He lands in Roswell, New Mexico. It's interesting because the movie, The Man Who Fell to Earth, that stars David Bowie, was filmed mostly in and around it was filmed entirely in New Mexico. So here we have these echoes, these mirrors: Bowie, Roswell, Felix Baumgartner. And so I'm going to read you the story. And it's a very Promethean feat. Keep that in mind, right? It's Promethean, but it's also Icarus. This is like Icarus. This is like the man who fell to earth. You know, Icarus, who, interestingly enough, we had the Labyrinth project on Friday, and that's where the myth of Icarus comes about, you know, because Icarus has these wax wings with feathers, and it's his way to get out of the labyrinth that was created by the Minotaur. Icarus' father, by the way, created those wings for him. And Icarus has been a myth that I've been interested for a long time. And so what we have on Monday is a recreation of the myth of Icarus. Although instead of dying, he actually lives, and he sets this record for a jump and the sound barrier and the whole 9 yards. So I'll just read this to you here. This is Roswell, New Mexico. In a giant leap from more than 24 miles up, a daredevil skydiver shattered the sound barrier Sunday while making the highest jump ever, a tumbling, death-defying plunge from a balloon to a safe landing in the New Mexico desert. Felix Baumgartner hit Mach 1.24, or 833.9 miles per hour, according to preliminary data, and became the first man to reach supersonic speed without traveling in a jet or a spacecraft after hopping out of a capsule that had reached an altitude of 128,100 feet above the Earth. Landing on his feet in the desert, the man known as Fearless Felix lifted his arms in victory to the cheers of jubilant friends and spectators who closely followed his descent in a live television feed at the command center. When I was standing there on top of the world, you become so humble. You do not think about breaking records anymore. You do not think about gaining scientific data. He said after the jump, the only thing you want is to come back alive. A worldwide audience watched live on the internet via cameras mounted on his capsule as Baumgartner, wearing a pressurized suit, stood in the doorway of his capsule, gave a thumbs up, and leapt into the stratosphere. Sometimes we have to get really high to see how small we are, an exuberant Baumgartner told reporters outside Mission Control after the jump. Baumgartner's descent lasted over 9 minutes, about half of it in a free fall of 119,846 feet, according to Brian Utley, a jump observer from the FAI, an international group that works to determine and maintain the integrity of aviation records. He said the speed calculations were preliminary figures. During the first part of Baumgartner's free fall, anxious onlookers at the command center held their breath as he appeared to spin uncontrollably. When I was spinning first 10 seconds, 20 seconds, I never thought I was going to lose my life, but I was disappointed because I'm losing my record. I put 7 years of my life into this, he said. He added, in that situation, when you spin around, it's like hell. You don't know if you can get out of that spin or not. Of course it was terrifying. I was fighting all the way down because I knew that there must be a moment where I can handle it. Baumgartner said traveling faster than sound is hard to describe because you don't feel it. The pressurized suit prevented him from feeling the rushing air or even the loud noise he made when breaking the sound barrier. With no reference points, you don't know how fast you travel, he said. The 43-year-old Austrian paratrooper, he's Austrian, which is interesting, with more than 2,500 jumps behind him, had taken off early Sunday in a capsule carried by a 55-story, ultra-thin helium balloon. His ascent was tense at times and included concerns about how well his facial shield was working. Any contact with the capsule on his exit could have torn his suit, a rip that could expose him to a lack of oxygen, and temperatures as low as minus 70 degrees. That could have caused lethal bubbles to form in his bodily fluid. So it's like the reverse bends, right? You're up too high or down too low. So it's like the reverse bends. But none of that happened. He activated his parachute as he neared the earth, gently gliding into the desert at about 40 miles east of Roswell and landing smoothly. The images triggered another loud cheer from onlookers at Mission Control, among them his mother, Ava Baumgartner, who is overcome with emotion, crying. He was then taken by helicopter to meet fellow members of his team, whom he hugged in celebration. Coincidentally, Baumgartner's accomplishment came on the 65th anniversary of the day that U.S. test pilot Chuck Yeager became the first man to officially break the sound barrier in a jet. Yeager, in fact, commemorated that feat on Sunday, flying in the back seat of an F-15 Eagle as it broke the sound barrier at more than 30,000 feet above California's Mojave Desert. So now you have, this is a perfect kind of Jupiter and Gemini symmetry. Am I right? You have Felix Baumgartner falling from the sky and breaking the sound barrier on the day that Yeager broke the sound barrier in Roswell, New Mexico, where theoretically an alien spacecraft crashed and facilitated the technological advancements and technological rush of the 20th century, and of course contact with other aliens and the mythology of Roswell and Greys and all that stuff. That's another sort of Gemini symmetrical reflection of the same event. And then, of course, Yeager breaking the sound barrier. He didn't fly, he was in the back seat, but breaking the sound barrier again as he commemorated both his time where he broke the sound barrier and also Baumgartner's feat. Interesting stuff. He was taken by helicopter to meet fellow members of his team, whom he hugged in celebration. Coincidentally, okay, we got that. Okay. So at Baumgartner's insistence, some 30 cameras recorded his stunt. Shortly after launch, screens at Mission Control showed the capsule dangling from the massive balloon as it rose gracefully above the New Mexico desert. With cheers erupting from organizers, Baumgartner could be seen on video calmly checking instruments inside the capsule. The dive was, in fact, more than just a stunt. NASA is eager to improve its blueprints for future spacesuits. Interesting. Baumgartner's team included Joe Kittinger, who first tried to break the sound barrier from 19.5 miles up in 1960, reaching speeds of 614 miles per hour. With Kittinger inside Mission Control, the two men could be heard going over technical details during the ascension. That's interesting language, isn't it? During the ascension. Our guardian angel will take care of you, Kittinger radioed to Baumgartner around the 100,000-foot mark. Okay, so we just had guardian angel and ascension within the space of 2 paragraphs. An hour into the flight, Baumgartner had ascended more than 63,000 feet and had gone through a trial run of the jump sequence. Ballast was dropped to speed up the ascent. Kittinger told him, "Everything is green, doing great." As Baumgartner ascended, so did the number of viewers watching on YouTube. Company officials said the event broke a site record with more than 8 million simultaneous live streams at its peak. After Baumgartner landed, his sponsor, Red Bull, posted a picture of him on his knees on the ground to Facebook, generating nearly 216,000 likes, 10,000 comments, and more than 29,000 shares in less than 40 minutes. On Twitter, half the worldwide trending topics had something to do with the jump, pushing past 7 NFL football games. Among them was this tweet from NASA: "Congratulations to Felix Baumgartner and Red Bull Stratos on a record-breaking leap from the edge of space." The attempt marked the end of a long road for Baumgartner, a record-setting high-altitude jumper. He already made 2 preparation jumps in the area, one from 15 miles high and another from 18 miles high. He said that this was his final jump. I was going to say, what do you do after that? I guess you go on a speaking tour, right? I mean, that's really the next step. So there we go, Felix Baumgartner. What's also interesting is that Madison Bumgarner, which is Baumgartner, Bumgarner is the southernized version of Baumgartner. is Bumgarner. Madison Bumgarner. He pitched yesterday for the San Francisco Giants. So you had a Bumgarner and a Baumgartner doing their thing in a very, again, Jupiterian and Geminian aspect. Fascinating stuff. Okay, so what do I derive from this? Do I think it's significant? Yes, I do. I do think it's significant because he did land in Roswell, and then you have this echo, this Gemini and Jupiter Gemini echo effect with Yeager and Baumgartner. What does it mean? Well, here's what I think it means. I think what we're going to see now is we are going to see some very interesting advancements in technology. And I'm just following The Man Who Fell to Earth script, the film about Thomas Newton, who is David Bowie. The other thing too here with the Baumgartner flight and free fall is that it also is a mirror and an echo of the fallen angel, right? I mean, Lucifer fell to earth. Lucifer fell to earth from the skies and brought technology. That's what happened. He brought technology to man. That's exactly what he brought. The Man Who Fell to Earth, the movie with David Bowie, is all about that. That's who he is in the film. His name is Thomas Newton. Who is Newton? Of course, Newton is the modern equivalent. Everything in this realm, in this domain, for the most part, is Newtonian physics. But Newton, of course, was the guy who dropped the apples and came up with the laws of gravity. Well, where else do we see the apple? We see the apple in the Garden of Eden, and, of course, temptation and knowledge. And here we have the meth being uncoiled, like the snake that it is. So here we have another echo and another mirror of a fallen angel in Baumgartner coming to earth. And again, the language in this piece is our guardian angel. Okay? So let's go back and look at that. Our guardian angel will take care of you. Who is the guardian angel? That's a really interesting question, don't you think? Who is the guardian angel? I'm guessing. I'm putting my money down on their guardian angel. So I think what we're going to see now is we're going to see an infusion of technology, because in the film The Man Who Fell to Earth, Thomas Newton brings all these technologies that change the social economy. And ultimately he's shut down because of it, because he's a reflection of this mythology of Lucifer coming to earth and bringing technology, and which is a very Atlantean, by the way. But at the same time, he is crucified because of this. And so this gives a whole interesting spin to the Luciferian myth. Like, he is the one that's being crucified. Because why? Because force is greater than himself. Even greater than himself will push back on his love for humanity, his love for mankind, and giving humanity, mankind, the technology, the toys, the tools in order to live like gods. Yes, there is a force greater. The forces of the marketplace are even greater than Lucifer, according to The Man Who Fell to Earth. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now. Keep your eyes open for very rapid advancements. There's going to be something coming in the next 3 to 6 months to the marketplace that is going to shift technology in a very important way. I'm assuming, by the way, this is going to be coming through Apple, because it just makes sense, right? We just talked about Newton. We just talked about The Man Who Fell to Earth. We just talked about Lucifer. We talked about the gift of technology. So look for something to come through Apple in the next 3 to 6 months that is going to be a game changer in a big way. All right. I'm assuming that it might be their TVs, but I'm not going to say that that's going to be it. But they have been working on their TVs, ITV, for quite some time, and apparently it's pretty phenomenal what they're bringing to the marketplace. So, but that won't be the only thing. Obviously, there'll be more, and I believe that this flight from space, at the edge of space, signals and heralds a new. This is a very Uranian and Aries. I mean, think about this, okay? Think about this now. Let's look at this. And now we had David Blaine, who just last week put himself in a Tesla coil. Okay, that is David Blaine in the Tesla coil. That is Prometheus. It's like stealing fire from the gods. He's charged. He was charged for 3 days in that portal, in that vacuum in New York City. Electrified. That is Uranus and Aries personified. And now we have Felix Baumgartner falling from space as Icarus. Fascinating stuff. Again, more Uranus and Aries. The will, the human spirit, man, Uranus, technological advancement, shocking developments in the field of human endeavor. We've had 2 events now. Fairly interesting stuff, right? So we've had electricity, which is fire. Electricity is electric fire, and then we have air. So we have electric fire, and we have air. So we should expect at least 2 more events like this, one with water and one with earth, coming soon to a human theater near you. Fascinating stuff. Keep your eyes peeled to the theater of technological development, some of which may not be all that great, by the way. Not all technology is here to free us from the subservience, from the chains of our physical reality and everything that we have to put into it in order to live. And that can be evidenced, obviously, by what they plan on doing here in California and tracking not just how far you drive, but where you drive to. Because that's part of it. Yeah, you got miles on your little account there, but those miles aren't just any miles. Those are trackable miles. All right, speaking of technology, here in California, again, people in the state are pushing back on genetically modified foods. Thank freaking God, okay? They're pushing back on genetically modified foods. There's a bill here in California that is forcing food manufacturers and food providers to list in their foods which ones are genetically modified. Like, for instance, if you have, let's say you have a jar of salsa, it's going to have to list that the tomatoes in that salsa have been genetically engineered or genetically modified. That's what's in this bill. I'm watching TV last night, and there's this California grower, and he's here in California. There are a group of people that are going to force us to label food and what we put in food. As a food grower, I can assure you that the cost of this is going to be quite high and prohibitive for us to keep our growing costs down. Unfortunately, those costs are going to get passed on to you, the consumer, and will raise the price of food. Now, don't you trust us? We've been providing you with food for the last 50 years. Why would we do anything wrong? Why would we harm you? And if, by the way, we do have to do this, we're going to fuck you, okay? No, he didn't really say that. But that's the message. It's like, okay, you're going to do this, we're going to raise the price of food. That is the message. And that's what I've been saying for a while now. This whole gas thing, this is like a warning salvo, right? It's like a bang. You go through the machinations of making us transparent, and we're gonna hurt you. You're gonna hurt at the cash register, bub. So while you and I will be forced to eat the genetically modified produce of Planet Monsanto, of course, those who have privilege and rank and resource, they don't have to. Here's an article from Mercola.com. Mercola's great. Yes, he's selling things. I don't care. I don't care. Give me your newsletter. Maybe I'll buy something. Maybe I won't. I don't know, but I want to read. I want to stay informed. This is by Dr. Mercola himself, or at least he's got his name in the byline. Over the past few years, an interesting pattern has emerged where political supporters of genetically engineered GE foods are feasting on organics. Let me repeat that sentence, okay? Over the past few years, an interesting pattern has emerged where political supporters of genetically engineered GE foods are feasting on organics while promoting unlabeled GE foods for everyone else. Go figure. According to Peter Out, most recently, Mother Jones discussed how presidential hopeful Mitt Romney, whose ties to Monsanto go back to the late 70s when GE crops were still in the R&D phase, reportedly makes sure his own meals are nothing but organic. According to Peter Alexander of MSN Today, on Romney Air, or Hair Force One, as Reuters' Steve Holland like to call it, Mitt Romney has his own galley and forward cabin. And while I've never been invited up front, sources close to the campaign tell me the shelves are stocked with a wide variety of healthy fare, cashew cereals, hummus, pita, as well as an organic applesauce. Everything's organic, I'm told, including the ingredients to Romney's favorite, peanut butter and honey sandwiches. Even more interesting, in a 2002 article about Romney's wife, Anne, she credits a combination of organic foods and holistic medicine for turning her health around. After she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1988, the profile reads in part, she was 49 at the time, and the disease was progressing rapidly. She says, prompting the doctors to put her on steroids, which made her so sick she could barely get out of bed. They were killing me, she says. The treatment, you have bone loss. They are so bad for you. Mrs. Romney was introduced to several practitioners of holistic medicine who persuaded her to adopt alternative therapies. She now eats organic foods and very little meat. She practices reflexology and undergoes acupuncture treatments. She credits the lifestyle with turning her health around. Everyone has to find their own way, she says. 3 years ago, I was really sick and not able to function at all. A lot of symptoms are now gone. Mrs. Romney isn't the only success story in which food played a center role in beating multiple sclerosis. Last year, I posted an article about Dr. Terry Walls, who reversed MS after 7 years of deterioration on the best conventional treatments available, simply by changing her diet. Wouldn't it be a nice change of pace if our agricultural authorities, not to mention our president, could reach into their hearts and find humanity to fight for everyone's right to eat wholesome food? And that doesn't contain foreign DNA, built-in pesticides, and an inordinate amount of synthetic chemicals, so that diseases such as MS and cancer could be curtailed before they even get a foothold. If GE foods are so great, why won't the elite eat them? While Obama has been a huge supporter of big biotech during his term, listen to that, my liberal and progressive friends. Okay? I'll read the sentence for you one more time. While Obama has been a huge supporter of big biotech during his term, Romney, for my conservative friends, Romney is just as tight with Monsanto, having actually successfully guided the company out of lawsuits with Congress in the shameful aftermath of Agent Orange, a Monsanto creation which was supposed to be harmless to everything except vegetation, heinous chemical dumping incidents in Missouri and Alabama. So Romney got Monsanto out of a series of major lawsuits. He's also in favor of putting the Monsanto rider provision in the 2012 Farm Bill, a rider that would prevent a federal court from putting in place court-ordered restrictions on a GE crop, even if the approval were fraudulent or involved in bribery, among other things. You know, this reminds me of when Rockefeller really got behind allopathic medicine and the creation of the AMA and all that stuff back in the 20s and the 30s. This is when allopathic medicine and the rise of technology, again, coming through Uranus and Aries, they had all this technological equipment like X-ray machines and all these things that they needed to have a market for, okay? So instead of homeopathy or naturopathy, they promoted allopathy. And, who did Rockefeller go to see? He went to go see naturopaths and homeopaths. So there's two rules in place for the people who make the rules, obviously, and that includes what they eat and what they force upon the rest of us. So what else do we have here? Unfortunately, Mitt Romney is just one in a line of politicians who support and promote GE foods as being just as safe and natural as conventional foods, while properly serving up nothing but organic for their own families. President Obama, as his predecessor George W. Bush and Bill Clinton, have all reportedly insisted on an organic diet. You see, even clones like organic food. That's how good it is for you. The mindfuck with organic food, though, is it's just regular food. It's just food. It's just how food should be grown. Organic puts it into this really magical bucket. No, it's just food. It's another weird little, mind fuck that we all have to deal with. No, it's just food. That's all it is. There should just be food, and then there should be genetically modified food. I guess organic meaning that there's pesticides and all that stuff. Mother Jones writes, what's my evidence that the Clintons and Bushes ate organic? Get this from someone who knows, Walter Scheib, who served as White House executive chef during the Clinton and Bush eras. From 1994 to 2005, I was the executive chef at the White House. This offered me not only the personal honor of serving two unique and interesting first families, but the professional challenge of fulfilling Hillary Clinton's mandate of bringing contemporary American cuisine and nutritionally responsible food to the White House. This meant that nearly all the product used was obtained from local growers and suppliers. There was a small garden on the roof of the White House where produce was grown. The ethic of the purchasing and the cooking at the White House under my direction and under the continued direction of current White House executive chef Chris Comerford is one of respect for the pedigree of the product and the manner it is grown, gathered, raised, or caught. Let me break that down for you. They're eating the best food that our money can buy. The Clinton and Bush families dined regularly on organic foods. Both Wagyu and grass-fed beef were frequently used. Scheib was again quoted in a 2009 article by Think Progress stating that Laura Bush was adamant that in all cases, and that's capitalized, if an organic product was available, it was to be used in place of a non-organic product. Meanwhile, the article lists a number of atrocious food policies instituted by her husband. Who knows, perhaps she was so adamant about organics because she knew the quality and safety of conventional food was rapidly going down the toilet. Guess who said everything that's in a bottle or package is like poison in a way that most people don't even know? The Obama White House may be even more progressive about healthful dining than previous presidents. In the 2008 article about First Lady Michelle Obama, published in the New Yorker, one morning during a roundtable at Ma Fisher's, a diner in Milwaukee, Elizabeth Crawford, a recently divorced caterer with 2 children, brought up the subject of the eating habits of American families. I really, really hope that Barack will jump on that, she said. Then, having given thoughtful but boilerplate responses most of the morning, Michelle suddenly departed from her script. It was the most animated I saw her on the campaign trail. You know, she said, in my household over the last year, we have just shifted to organic for this very reason. I mean, I saw just a moment in my 9-year-old's life. We have a good pediatrician who is very focused on child obesity, and there was a period where he was like, she's tipping the scale. So we started looking through our cabinets. You know, you've got fast food on Saturday, a couple days a week. You don't get home. The leftovers, good, not the third day. So that whole notion of cooking on Sunday is out, and the notion to think about a lunch every day, she's kind of hard, she's got rough. So you grab the Lunchables, right? And the fruit juice boxing, and we think that's juice. And you start reading the labels, and you realize there's high fructose corn syrup in everything we're eating, every jelly, every juice, everything that's in a bottle or package is like poison. in a way that most people don't even know. She said this, by the way. This is Michelle Obama. Yes, high fructose corn syrup is one of the most atrocious ingredients in the American food supply today in terms of what it does to your health. Not only is fructose a major contributor to metabolic syndrome, diabetes, and obesity, the vast majority of it is also derived from genetically engineered corn. That's right, which has its own increasingly well-documented ill health effects. Most recently, the world's first lifetime feeding study using Monsanto GE corn found it caused massive breast tumors, kidney and liver damage, and other serious health problems. So there we go. It goes on. This is quite a long article, and you can get this. Maybe I'll just drop this in the I'll drop this in the chat room right now. You guys can check it out. Here we go. This is in the chat room. Bingo. There you go. Done. You can read that and check that out. Yeah. Genetically modified food. The heat is on, folks. The heat is on. We are in a time where we need to be able to really hunker down and deal with some of this stuff. All right, I'm going to share a story with you. It's a personal story, and hopefully it means something, because it's kind of changed my life in an interesting way. So I belong to this message board. It's just a forum for guys that go on and post about football, namely the San Francisco 49ers. Been a part of this message board for, I started posting in 2002, so about 10 years now. And I've met people. It's not just virtual. These people become part of my life. I've met them. I've hung out with them. Not all of them, but, whoever's local. I've watched games with them. I've done, other things outside of football with some of them. So this has been, an interesting experience for me. And so I'm kind of an elder statesman on this board. There's a guy on the board who is from another country. He's from Bulgaria. And he's an avid and passionate 49er fan, which is bizarre to me because he lives in Bulgaria. He knows more about the San Francisco 49ers than 3/4 of the people that follow the 49ers who live in the Bay Area. I mean, this guy's a freak, okay? And he's passionate about them. And he's also kind of a wild card, and he doesn't always have the greatest ethic when dealing with people. And in fact, he can get extremely angry and personal and nasty. And that started to happen on this message board. It's been happening for over a year. And people have been falling away because not only is this guy passionate, but apparently he doesn't have a life. Because he's on this message board, I would say out of 24 hours a day, he's probably on this message board at least 12 to 14 hours out of those 24 hours. And if he's not on there live, then he's like on there on the back end of it, reposting things that have been posted while he was sleeping or being in his casket, whatever he does. And so anyway, he turned incredibly nasty. He was going after people. He was vile. And I've got a pretty wide berth when it comes to people expressing themselves. It's like, that's what I do. If I do it, why can't other people do it? But he was crossing lines, and he was using vile language, and he was insulting people. He insulted a friend of mine whom I know on the board. He's 80 years old. The man's 80 years old and he's deaf, and he's insulting him. And I'd had enough, and so I stood up. I stood up to the guy, and I basically said, look, if you don't clean up your act, I'm going to move to ban you off this message board. And it was really interesting to see what happened as a result of this. And some people vilified me for doing that. Some people thought that I was some people thought like I was like Big Brother, okay? And that it was a witch hunt, it was McCarthyism, and it's not really what it was about at all. What I saw was somebody that was out of line, who was being incredibly hateful. And I don't use that word lightly. I really don't, because I think criticism and a good argument is not only fine, it's warranted. We need that. We need to be able to do that. But he was clearly stepping over lines that I did not support at all. And so I took a lot of heat for this. And then finally, people began to come out of the woodworks and say, yeah, I want him gone too. He doesn't bring anything to this board. So now there was a split. that was happening in this domain. There were people who were, hey, screw that, we can say anything we want, you know, and then there were other people who were like, no, he's bringing down the quality of the board. I'm the former. I think he was. But it was fascinating to be able to take a stand in that place. And he would actually, so what I did is I didn't ban him, or we didn't ban him, but I created another forum for him. It's like, just go over there. Just go do your thing over there, which he's been doing. I haven't been back since yesterday. But it was a fascinating experience for me, because what happened is that we said no, or I said no, and other people said no, in a way that was ultimately really empowering. And yeah, it was messy, and yeah, people didn't agree with us, and yeah, there was a dissenting of opinion. But this is really kind of where we are right now. And we have to say no. We just can't lay down and allow these waves of progress, or these waves of bureaucracy, or whatever they are, just roll over us. We can't do that. You know, and there's a time and a place for everything. So I'm just sharing this with you because it was an interesting dynamic that I experienced. And what was really fascinating about it was that it was quite empowering for other people to be able to have somebody voice what they were thinking or feeling. So I'm just sharing this with you. And you don't want to, I don't think we have to be misanthropes and saying no to everything. But I think that an appropriately timed, hey, this is enough, we've had enough, is a really important, it's a really important tool to break out of the toolbox. You know, while we're affirming our existence, saying no every now and then can be a really strong action. New moon today in Libra, so we're trying to find balance. We're seeking balance between yes and no. That's where we are. There's nothing wrong with that, seeking the balance between the affirmation and the dissent. But I will leave you with 8 minutes left in the show. I will leave you with this. I'm going to put this link in the chat room as well. It is a troubling account of yet another executive order signed by Barack Obama, which allows the seizure of Americans' bank accounts. And I'm just going to drop this into the chat room here. Check this out. This is not a good. This is not a good. In the chat room here. This is not a good development. I'll just read you the first article. If you're in the chat room, you can check out the link. It's on newamerican.com. You can find it there if you're listening to the podcast. The latest executive order, by the way, Obama has signed over 900 executive orders since he's been in office. It's frightening. Emanating from the White House, October 9, now claims the power to freeze all bank accounts and stop any related financial transactions that a sanctioned person may own or try to perform, all in the name of Iran sanctions. So this is a blanket. They're using Iran as this. They're essentially what they're doing is they're sanctioning Iran, but it's like a very wide net. So they'll sanction anybody else too. Like, oh, well, listen, you actually have clicked on a website that has an Iranian film on it, and you actually watched 20 minutes of that Iranian film, so there's got to be a link between you and that. We're going to sanction your funds. Titled an executive order from the president regarding authorization and the implementation of certain sanctions. The order says that if an individual is declared by the president, the Secretary of State, or the Secretary of Treasury to be a sanctioned person, he or she will be unable to obtain access to his accounts, will be unable to process any loans or make them or move them to any other financial institution inside or outside the United States. In other words, his financial resources will have successfully been frozen. The EO expands its authority by making him unable to use any third party, such as a partnership, association, trust, joint venture, corporation, subgroup, or any other organization that might wish to help him or allow him to obtain access to his funds. So once it's frozen, it's gone, no more. And if the individual so sanctioned decides that the ruling is unfair, he isn't allowed to sue. In 2 words, the individual has successfully been robbed. But it's all very legal. The EO says the president has vested authority to issue it, and then references endless previous EOs, including one dating back to 1995, which declared a state of emergency, which hasn't been lifted. Executive Order 12957. That was issued by President Bill Clinton on March 15th, which is the Ides of March, 1995, which was obliquely related to the Iran problem. So here we go. There's more executive orders. They're getting tighter and tighter and tighter. This one now being able to seize your funds if that happens. Yes, indeed. Okay, so Truth Nova just kicked in into the chat room. Get some gold and silver or bitcoins. Gold and silver are good. I would recommend that. The only problem with gold, I think silver is safe for a number of reasons. The problem with silver is storing it because you need a lot of it, right? Gold is worth more, you need less gold. But I can certainly see an executive order where during a time of emergency that there is a gold, that they have some sort of executive order on gold, or gold is seized. If you sell gold, you'll be penalized. I don't think they'll do that with silver, though. That's one man's opinion. Hold on to gold. So if you hold on to gold, that would be a super, super long-term play because it would probably be beyond any kind of restriction that would be instituted during a time of crisis or state or federal emergency. I think silver's a good play. But take gold, too. It's a long play. All right, that's it. I want to thank everybody for listening today. The show is really taking off, I have to say. The numbers on the show are getting pretty impressive, and I'm looking forward to doing something a little bit different with it when I eventually arrive at my new destination, and hopefully we can get physical with this thing. That's my goal. I want to be terrestrial. Speaking of Austin and speaking of radio, Alex Jones coming under big fire. There's a new article out by Pete Santilli, who's gone after Alex Jones because there is some growing, and I mean growing, unrest with activists and with whistleblowers around Jones and what he's doing. Just to give you the brief thumbnail, what's happening is he's booking people, he's getting their information, and then he's canceling their appearances, which is not good. It's getting people to be quite suspect of Jones if they haven't already been suspect of him and what his agenda actually is. So he's there. He's in Austin. There's Stratfor? Stratfor is also in Austin. There's huge, and I mean huge, information and intelligence gathering corporation. They're the ones that have the goods on just about everybody. I think they're probably the back end for Facebook, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so that's it. Thanks again for being a part of the show today and listening. I appreciate every single one of you. New moon in Libra strikes and balance in your life, and you know what that means. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay open as possible. This is Robert Phoenix. I'll be back on Wednesday where we navigate the stars. And Friday we'll have Claire Kuhn on, and we'll get into free energy on the backside of Felix Baumgartner's drop from space to Earth as the fallen angel, the man who fell to Earth. We'll talk about free energy, where we are, what it means, and how we can get some. All right. I'll see you all on Wednesday. Adios.
We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.